today, as you see there, is your first 100 days in your new role. Just to introduce everybody to you, my name is Brendan Lally. I'm a member of the team here, the UL Careers team, formerly, I suppose, an employer, HR person. Similarly, Gavin, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody, I'm Gavin Connell. I'm the head of careers here in the university. Similar to Brendan, I have been in the university about 10 years, but prior to that, I worked in HR functions in several large American multinationals.
Okay, so in a moment we're going to look, thanks Gavin for that, we're going to look at the agenda. But a thought, Gavin, has entered my head, a topic that we probably haven't covered, and I think maybe it mightn't be the worst idea if we just maybe talked about it for a minute, and that would be when you receive your offer, that feeling of imposter syndrome. What do you think of that, Gavin?
Actually, yeah, okay, good.
Let's roll with that. So imposter syndrome is a term that is often used to people who feel or don't feel quite comfortable in the position that they've attained, and it can happen right the way through your career. Correct, Gavin? Right up to senior level.
Yeah,
and you'd be absolutely amazed behind closed doors in the privacy of a room who would admit to that. In my own work, I worked in a large bank and did some coaching with some senior people, and a lot of them would have maybe come in from school and rose through the ranks, and would admit in private that they just didn't feel I don't know, what's the word, Gavin, comfortable in the position, that they were like they'd have all sorts of excuses in relation to why they feel they weren't legitimate in the role. And I think it's particularly prevalent at graduate level. And I think it's no harm maybe just to acknowledge it, that feeling that you mightn't be good enough, even though you have gotten great grades, you've went through a rigorous recruitment process, you've been the candidate that's successful. We just want to, I suppose, relay the fact that that's a normal feeling, and it mightn't be something that goes away, but it's universal. Would that be fair enough to say, Gavin?
Yeah, I would think so. And I probably just to follow up on that, Brendan, I think that there's an element of you understanding the expectation of your future employer. Okay, so yes, having a degree in a certain discipline or whatever the case, or not, maybe depending on the employer, is a ticket, right? Okay, to entry. Having a certain grade is a ticket to entry. But do they expect you to walk in and start changing things immediately? Absolutely not. But really what they're trying to do is, and we'll cover some of this in the slides today, is to be very attuned to what you don't know, right? Okay, to be very honest about that, right? Okay, and that's really when you go into any organization, you don't know anything. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, because how could you, right? Okay, it's a new organization. It's a new role for you within that organization, so you're on a real steep learning curve, right? Okay, so to admit that is number one, right? To be really attuned to what you don't know. The second part of it is then obviously is being the openness to learn, right? Okay, and to continue to learn. And almost to Brendan's point around, you'll find people throughout their career that will have that feeling of imposter syndrome, right? Okay, but I think where you need to be very cognizant of yourself within any interview process or recruitment process, they have seen something in you that they believe you're a good fit to their team, that you have said something as part of the recruitment and those interview questions or psychometrics or assessment centers that they bring you through, that they have said person seems to be open to learning, seems to be aware of what they can't do, right? Okay, and that's what we're interested in. All of the other things you'll hear a lot of employers saying, once they have an understanding of themselves, we can train them on everything else, right? Okay, it's the openness to being willing to learn and to be not sure of how to do things, but to ask questions from that perspective, right? Okay, so I think it's really important, just as we kind of kick off in this, is that you're not going to know everything, and that's okay. Just be comfortable with that, but be comfortable in the fact is that I want to learn, and I want to ask questions, and I want to be able to move forward on my career. I think that's important.
And I think as well, Gavin, just to trust the people behind the table. You know, they've been in this business a lot longer, obviously, than you, and it's unlikely you're the first graduate to be ever hired in the company, so they know what they're doing. Yes, we know that you very much put on your best performance in relation to the recruitment process, but just trust that these are experienced people, and they, as Gavin said, they hired you for a reason, so they see the ability in you, and just trust the process. As we kick off today in relation to our talk at lunchtime. So we're going to, myself and Gavin, I suppose, sat down and we looked at our own experience in industry, and we came up with a couple of topics in relation to your first 100 days. These include, you know, getting a head start, your relationship with your boss, avoiding your comfort zone, looking at graduate expectations, getting a win, requesting feedback, and networking. And we're going to, I suppose, talk around each of those, Gavin, you know, and kind of expand on that. And if anyone has any questions, obviously we'll leave that chat box open there. One of us will keep an eye on it as we go forward. So happy enough, Gavin, to kick off. So we'll go to the very first point. Very first point is to begin before day one, to give yourself a head start. Do you want to elaborate, Gavin, on that one?
Yeah, so so for me, right, okay, just in my prior experience when I did a lot of recruitment and stuff like that, I think the one that probably stands out to me is the candidate who contacted me in advance of them starting and saying, is it okay if I start to connect with people on LinkedIn that work in the organization? And if there's any way that I can get any early kind of material in relation to handbooks, training and stuff like that, that helps you with the lingo. And not to kind of to take away from any organization, but I worked in Intel for a long time, right? Okay, and they actually had a book of acronyms. That's how many acronyms that were used within this organization because of the nature of what they did. And when I say a book, there was probably 100 pages of different acronyms. You didn't need them all, but you need to know some of them, right? Okay, because it was like almost a different language that they were speaking. So it was really helpful, right? Okay, that we could actually share that information. So I think, you know, from the very start, if you can set up short introductory offers, or sorry, calls to potential members of staff, right? Okay, I think they'll be open to it. I think they'll think that's very innovative, right? Okay, I think it'll show quite a lot of interest from that perspective, right? Learning as much as you can about the new employer, not off their website, right? Okay, but it's about understanding how they organize things. Do they use a certain sort of project management tool, i.e. Monday, MS Project, that you can kind of get yourself ahead of where they use different technology? Maybe some training you can do in advance of it. So it's just asking all those pertinent questions, right? So the most important thing is, right, is that so Brendan had a good chat about this, right? Okay, is that the first 100 days are quite stressful, right? Okay, in the sense of there's a lot of pressure on you to perform, right? Okay, and I don't mean perform as in that you're going to have every project completed, but there's almost like people are casually or very focusedly observing you in every circumstance, from meetings to casual coffee encounters, and it's a natural thing that people do to kind of go, here's a new person, what are they like? How do they seem to interact with the team? How do they interact with customers? How do they interact in a social setting? All those kind of things. So I think there's no hard and fast rule to this one, but don't expect to arrive and start working from 9 to 5. So don't arrive at 5 to 9. You can't really walk out at 5 o'clock, right? Okay. You kind of probably need to have a bit of a conversation with your partners, your family, whoever it is that's in your life, right? Okay, to say, I may have to work a bit, stretch goals here, as in time wise as well, right? Okay, I you know, I'm going to arrive a bit early just to make sure I can get myself set up, because a lot of meetings start at first thing in the morning, and I want to make sure that I have everything ready to go. Equally, I might have to do a bit of work at the end. You know, it could be just to make sure that I'm top of myself. So that first 100 days, it's really kind of understanding that it's not just in and out 9 to 5, right? Okay. Now, there are some roles that are hourly paid. That's a different thing. But generally speaking, on the graduate side of the house, they're salarized contracts. But I'm not expecting you to be there 24 hours a day, but definitely to be able to have that kind of flex from that perspective, right? I do
Absolutely.
think. Sorry, Brent.
No, go ahead.
I do think it's good to do a SWOT analysis of yourself, right? Okay, that's very much in that area of what are your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Because somebody might ask you, what are you really good at? Right. And it's not an interview question. It's just saying, like, what are you good at? What do you like to do? Where do you want us to help you in relation to some of the weaknesses? And generally, I don't even think to use weaknesses anymore. I think they say areas for development, right? Okay, it's more positive language than weaknesses, right? And then somebody might say to you, what's your career opportunity? What are you looking for? Like in 4 years, 5 years, where would you like to be? And don't say their job. That's a ridiculous answer, right? Okay, because you don't know what their job is. But it's very much around, looking to get a head start. I'm looking to build my capabilities, whatever that case is, or I've had some exposure to this through a placement opportunity or through college, and I'd like to expand on that because that's what you would probably be there for anyway. And then really recognizing them and understanding your challenges, because that's important, right? Okay, you have your challenges because you are a new hire. So it's different to what Brendan was talking about, the imposter syndrome earlier on. This can become a weakness later on, is that you haven't engaged, you haven't built your profile, you haven't built your skills, expertise, and it is 100 days down the road. And generally speaking, at 100 days, most employers are saying there should be a really good foundation put down here. And if something comes up, like some strange question or some inability to do something, they'll kind of go, wow, I'm kind of shocked that I didn't know how to do that after 100 days. So it's just kind of making sure you're prepping yourself and you're constantly evaluating where you are within that SWOT analysis. And one of the most important things, and I can't emphasize this, is if you are in a meeting, start taking notes. I don't care if you like taking notes or not, take notes, because there'll be something that will be said in it and you will not have the foggiest clue what they are saying. And it is important that you write it down when you're speaking to your manager or a colleague later on and say, in that meeting I was in, that was said. What does that actually mean? And that's important.
It's good point. Yeah.
Yeah. If you say that 100 days later and you're in a meeting and somebody says, we were talking about ABC, and you're kind of going, I don't know what that is. You kind of go, God, we've been talking about it for 100 days. How would you not know? So that's kind of the example I'm using there. So that's just important, just to be cognizant of that.
And just on the meeting thing, Gavin, just to request to come along to meetings. People are wrapped up in their own work. They mightn't even think, but they'd have no problem. Again, you can discuss that with your line manager. Yep. To try and fill up your diary to get moving. I think the sooner you add value, as we said in the description, the happier you're going to be, and everybody else is going to be with you.
Yeah.
Okay, we might move on to the next one here. Begin your real job on day one. Impress your boss first, and other stakeholders next. Yeah. I suppose over my years, I think your relationship with your boss is huge, and even more pronounced if you are brand new, because nobody else knows you. You're in close quarters, direct contact with your boss on a more regular basis than anyone else. So the opinion of your boss is literally, I suppose, your brand very much in your early days. Would you agree, Gavin, or do you have anything?
Yeah. So you can have I think this kind of falls into the next slide as well, right? Okay, so it's very important that you understand what you want to get out of the contractual relationship from a grad job as well. But it's really important that you sit down with your boss on a very regular basis and say, what is it you want me to do? What does good look? What does success look like when you look at me? And be very aware. They're going to say some things that you may not like. They might say, yeah, you are doing a really good job over here. I'd like to see you do better over here. So this is called constructive criticism. Okay. Constructive being, it's not about criticism. I'm trying to help you to get the best out of me as your employer or your boss. So you need to be, if you're going to open yourself up to looking for that feedback or trying to understand what's required, you have to kind of dust off any, well, I might get offended by what they might say, right? Okay, you can't be offended. You have to engage with it and say, yeah, okay, so how do I go about making that better? How do I push myself? What does that look like? So it's all about asking that question. What does it look like? What does success look? How do I know I'm doing well, as opposed to them saying, good job? Good job could just be based on a small bit of an input to a project, but success is a different thing in my mind. Success is how you're doing overall. Good job is kind of, inferring that there's actually just a piece of work that you've done that's been pretty good, right? Okay. I think, Brendan, if you move on to the next slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this one.
Yeah, I will. And just one more point. I mean, that's on the professional side, but on the personal side, you have to build rapport, outside of maybe work topics, and that could mean small things like if they have children, learning their, her name or her children's names or his children's names, if they have particular interests, rugby, golf, cars, whatever. Just, to build that rapport, I think, Gavin, is important as well as you move through.
Yeah.
But to your point, Gavin, to be very, very clear on what the boss expects of you, not to wait for maybe your formal mid probation review in 3 months, or God forbid 6 months, when your probation is finished. Now, a well-trained line manager will have these regular check-ins, but you don't know what's happening in the business. Maybe it's absolutely extremely busy. So you have to take ownership and make sure that you're clear, and regularly touch back as you progress through. So
just before we finish it up, I'm sorry, Brent. I think
the
important part here is that you will have a direct supervisor or manager. You need to know who their manager is. You need to be really watching what's going on the next level above, if not even the next level above that as well, because that's who you're trying. So you're looking for success with your boss, and you're looking to seek to wow the ones above, because that's the ones who really can make the shift in your career. That kind of they're kind of go, oh my God, that's this girl is only a grad. Look what they're doing. That's fantastic. They're celebrating that with your boss, but they're also recognizing you as well, right? Okay, from that perspective. So it's good to know who their boss is, right? Okay, it's easy to find out. They all have anagrams and stuff like that of the hierarchy of who's reporting into who. So it's good to watch out for that as well.
Yeah, and to know the hierarchy, know that matrix, it's very, very important. The next point we'd like to make is to take ownership of work assigned, finish it to the highest possible standard, but avoid the trap of staying within your comfort zone. My own thoughts on the comfort zone, or to describe what that is, might be your job spec. So your job spec or the job ad was written. Now, we're presuming it's up to date, but it's fluid, it's flexible, and I would say, yeah, absolutely fulfill the criteria on the job ad, but look outside of that. And as the graphics says there, that's where the magic happens. Any thoughts on that, Gavin?
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example. This is like a pet peeve of mine, right? Okay, so anybody who's on the team who works with me, you'll know this, right? Okay, if so, inevitably you're going to be working on some form of Excel, regardless of where you work. Something's going to pop up as data somewhere, right? Okay, so if I'm looking for some information, I don't want you to send me an Excel file. I have no interest in going in and starting to work on the Excel file myself. What I want you to do is to take the data and tell me what it's saying. Right, okay, it's not difficult. Excel is quite easy to use. It's there's loads of different tools you can manipulate data. Or if it's that I have to present the data or somebody else has to present the data, don't just, because most systems export data and it doesn't look pretty. So you don't leave that for somebody. So to this point, definitely at a grad level, right? So take ownership of the work assigned. Is when somebody says, can you get me that data? They don't mean just dump an Excel sheet onto them. What I mean is tidy up the data, make sure there's no inaccuracies in it, right? Okay. And as part of, rather than just saying, here's the Excel file, you would give a summary of, here's the Excel file, here's something I've noted from it, right? That's bringing it to the next standard level. That's what they would expect of you. You're not going to do that in the first week or two, but over the 100 days, you should definitely be understanding what way data should be presented, or presentations, whatever the case, or customer reports. They need to be presented in a certain format that if you're giving it to somebody that's making them have to do a piece of work, they, what they're thinking to themselves, I could just do this myself. And that's not a good thing for somebody to be summarizing about you. Okay, so that's important. So if you don't know how to do it, this is the bit where your comfort zone is, oh, I know how to export the Excel. If you don't know how to do the other part of it, you need to go ask, you need to find out, or you need to address it in the sense of, is this what you're looking for? Do you want me to do anything else to that data or this information that I'm giving you? Because I can. And if you just show me how to do it, I will do that for you. Right. Okay. And that's where they start to see this is a person who has their head clued in. That's important from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's a good graphic. I think if you're too comfortable in a new role, that's not good. I think, you should be stretched. You should, there should be some sort of adrenaline, as Gavin says, taking on new information, stretching yourself, because that's where you'll grow. If you're not being stretched, you're not going to grow, and that would be a concern. Especially if you want, I suppose, to be considered a very successful, high potential hire. So again, just the point we're making here is just to stay out of your comfort zone. Don't stay in the safe zone for too long. Build positive relationships. Diversify your coffee break partners as much as possible. And we acknowledge that, we're in kind of a hybrid or remote setup. Hopefully this won't last for too long. But obviously you have a lot of catch-ups and, even at the moment, virtual coffee catch-ups. And to be sure that no matter how busy you are, especially in the early days, you make time for networking. You make time to build positive relationships. You ask, if you're introduced to somebody, to have the wherewithal to say, nice to meet you, Gavin. I wouldn't mind if it's all right with you, maybe putting in 10, 20 minutes in your calendar. I'd love to just to get a proper introduction maybe later in the week. And I think that would go down well, Gavin. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
Mindset.
There's an old expression out there: people buy from people, right? Okay, and I'm not talking about selling. I'm talking about if I'm in the HR department, somebody's in the manufacturing or engineering. If you're just sending emails, that's very transactional, and they may do it. They might do it for you. They may not do it for whatever it is. But if you have a relationship with that person, they'll do it for you because they know you. They know there's kind of it's one of those things reciprocal, right? Okay, that I might be looking for something off Gavin in the future. So yeah, for sure. And it's about relationships. So the broader your relationships pool is within a work environment, the better from that perspective. But
the more
I think
seamless the work for you. Yeah.
I think it's a given, right? Okay. I mean, just get out and start just stepping out and saying, hey, catch up for a coffee, whatever, or you're just chatting about different things. It doesn't always have to be work from that perspective, right?
Yeah, so it's a huge one. It's a huge one. I think we've covered the jargon, or you mentioned that every company, every department will have jargon. To Gavin's point, you'd nearly, if there is no dictionary like Intel had, start up a Word doc yourself and just start collecting all the jargon to be able to go in and out. Very, very important.
I like this piece now, right? Okay. Yeah. So, and sometimes this can come across the wrong way, right? Okay. So when we're this one here, we're saying is just be cautious in the first 30 days, right? Okay. You need to observe and learn, right? Okay. Now, that's not to say we're not looking for you to give input, right? Okay. But in the first 30 days, it's going to be very difficult to give input because you don't really know the history, the politics of why something is done a certain way, or who you might be offending. And that's the biggest concern is, oh, I think you should do it this way. And then you have the person over there going, well, I spent 5 years getting this way. So
yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Thanks for your input, but no thanks, right? Okay. So it's really important. I'd nearly even say like it's not even the first 30, it's kind of like 30 to 60 days, really kind of take it cautious around understanding. That's the thing about taking notes. You're kind of going like, I kind of got a sense of something from that person when they were talking about it. Is there something I need to be aware of? What's the politics there? Or whatever. People will tell you if you ask. If you don't ask, they won't tell you, right? Okay. But I would say to you, in every organization, regardless of who they are, a fresh pair of eyes is always something that they're looking for. They want somebody to come in and say, you know what, that's really good. I like that. Or, you know what, is there another way of doing this, right? Okay. So and I wouldn't be afraid. Okay, you'll have people. I'll probably keep coming back to Excel because it's just an easy example, right? Okay, there are people who are using Excel for years, but are using it the wrong way because they were taught how to use it 15 years ago. They're not really aware of all the new ways of transposing data or whatever the case is. You may know that, right? Okay, because you may have worked somewhere, you may have done it in college. It is okay to actually say, hey, can I show you this way of doing something? Like, it'll probably save 6 or 7 steps, right? Okay. And that's good. That's okay to do that, right? Okay. But I think if you're talking about an overall project, just be careful, right? It is very much around, as the infographic says there, it's about just be careful around the, paying attention, withhold your judgment, do a bit of reflection, and then clarify. And the clarify is find out why it's being done that way, what the history is, and then just go summarize if yourself, in the sense of, when you're talking to your manager or whatever, you can say, look, I've seen this and I don't know, am I allowed to give some input, but I would be happy to. I have some thoughts on it, but that's somewhere down the road that you would
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that, Gavin, I maybe have a red flag around getting sucked into politics too early. Yeah. You know, so there will be certain personalities in the department who will really want to get you on their side. You know, there could be, what would you know, grievances, many little, you know, camps, etc. And people are trying to recruit you into their way of thinking, and maybe testing you to see, what do you think after I've told you, what do you think of that? Again, to Gavin's point, first 30, 60 days, say very little. Say, well, I don't know, not here long enough. That sounds, you know.
That's really important, Brendan. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to contradict you, but I'm going to just to clarify.
Yeah.
Always clarify if somebody says something, right? Okay, you say, well, actually, I don't have an opinion on that, right? Okay, or I'm not here long enough, because if you don't, next thing it was Brendan and myself were talking, and whatever, we all agreed that that was an issue, and you're kind of going, I never said that, but you didn't say the opposite. So it's important just to kind of remember that, right? Okay. Yeah.
And you never know who's related to who as well, Gavin.
For sure.
You never know who's related to who in an organization. So be very, very careful and tight-lipped. And this point here, do not automatically follow what the next grad is doing. You want your work to be above the standard of a graduate. So if you become a carbon copy and thinking, that's it, I've reached the level, you don't know what standard in the scheme of things that previous graduate that maybe you're doing a handover with, how they're reviewed. They're on their way out. You know, they're not going to talk bad about themselves, etc. So again, I suppose you have to steer your own path, your own course expertly, carefully, as we've kind of discussed to this point. Anything else on that one, Gavin?
Yeah, look, I think you need to set your own standard, right? Okay, if your standard is actually only matching the one before you, how do you know it's the best? There could have been 10 before that were even better, right? Okay, so I think you need to set your own standard. You know what? And you need to be the one that everybody's saying, everybody else needs to be like you, and that's how you know, right? Okay, you're doing well, right? Okay.
And I suppose maybe if your colleague is a grad and they're you know, they're starting full time like yourself, you still need to maintain that relationship, and not forcibly say no. I mean, there's a grey piece in the middle. What you might hear some comments is, look, you can just do it that way. You know, you'll get away with it if you just do that. To Gavin's point, you know, you need to kind of just, you know, a little alarm bell should ring in your head there and say, well, look, I think, you know, for the time being, I'd be happier if I just do the whole thing, you know, at the moment. And, you know, they'll respect and say, fair enough, fire away. It's just I do it this way, you know. So just a point to make in relation to that. Next point there, look for quick. You okay, Gavin?
Yeah.
Look for quick, easy wins in the first 30 days. And one tried and trusted way to get a win, and we might describe what we mean by a win, is to volunteer. Okay. A win. Okay, I might start this, and Gavin, you can add to it. A win is recognition, positive recognition, and it can be small to maybe large recognition, but it's marking, I suppose, you on the radar of the team that are in place there. What you don't want is to just literally, you know, stay in the shadows, especially when you're trying to set your brand and a positive image early. So you nearly need to go out and look for opportunities to become visible. And one way you do that is to volunteer, to get on board a project or initiative, or maybe to take a slide or two of a presentation to get you seen and get you out there. Anything to add on that one, Gavin?
Actually, I'll give you two really good examples from my past, right? Okay, one of them was, we used to hire in Intel, about 100 grads, maybe 150 grads on any kind of rotation period. And one of the years, we've always had this thing of this kind of give back to the community. It's kind of corporate social responsibility. And, you know, they were talking about doing different things, different departments were doing one of the things. And one of the grads said, "Do you mind if I organise something with the grads to do something? It would be nice for us to do something from a team perspective, but also then give back to the community." So he kind of lived in the area, and he arranged for 20, I think maybe 20, 25 grads that had volunteered. Now, he didn't force them. He actually asked, he sent a circle around to the 100 or something. So, and 25 of them actually said, yeah, they would be interested. And it was something simple now. This is not complicated. It was something like painting a local community center for whatever, just for the community. It wasn't even underprivileged. It was just for the community center. It was just given back to the community. So to that individual got recognized, right, okay, by the general manager, just as being, that's what good teamwork looked like. They had these awards every couple of months. But they also, the 25 got recognized for volunteering as well. Now, if you're a part of the 150, you're saying, I want to know that one guy, but equally you're happy that you were part of the 25, because that's you that's being being shown as being, there's somebody who's inclusive, is thinking of others, and also is willing to volunteer. A second case, right, which was more business case when I worked in Dell, we used to take about 40 grads in, and they were from all business, from engineering, HR, finance, the whole remit. And so Dell used to work on a very kind of just-in-time operation, right? Okay, you order as a customer, and the order came into the line, it was built there and then, right? This was in Limerick. So there was a significant, we call it demand, that came into the market, right? Okay, and they just cannot get people, right? Okay, couldn't hire enough people to build systems, right? Okay, to meet the requirements. And 2 of the engineering graduates actually volunteered. We'll go on the production line for 2 weeks. Right? Okay, just said, if we can help, we'll go on the production line. You can just train us. It's purely assembly. It's not that difficult, right? But, well, I'm not going to say it's not that difficult, but once you learn it, it's kind of more proficiency. And they volunteered to go on the line, right? Okay, and they actually missed. The others missed the opportunity to volunteer. Some of them decided to do it a couple of days later, but they missed the opportunity, right? Okay. So that was the problem there, right? Okay. The 2 guys said, we'll do it. Okay. It was just straight off. They knew that there's somebody else was in trouble. The company was in trouble. It was around making sure customers were happy, and they jumped in straight away. So there's kind of 2 things. One is around corporate, that's kind of volunteering in general in the evening time or at the weekends. This was kind of in a work base, nothing to do with them in a way. It wasn't their job, but they could see that the company needed this, and they jumped in, right? Okay. So there's just 2 examples that come to mind that were actually recognized above and beyond.
Yeah. And a good way to volunteer would be the sports and social club. So you just find out who in the department looks after that, and that's a very, very good way, because that takes the informal, and it's an easy one as well. It's probably non-technical, so you'd be well able to slot in there and help arrange the next social occasion. And obviously there'll be a committee there, so you're going to build relationships as well. So it's an easy one when you're just in the door to just join the sports or social, get on the committee, and help organize the next event or the next day out. Day 30, share your 6 to 12 month plan. Do you want to?
Well, I don't think you'll have much of a choice there, because I think any good manager will say to you, what is your 6 to 12 month plan? They generally should be doing, I think we mentioned this before, there's kind of probationary periods that could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever the case is. So generally your manager should start meeting you kind of on a very regular basis. It might be nearly every day the first couple of weeks, and then it'll start moving to a weekly thing, and then they'll meet on a monthly basis, saying, okay, so where are you now based on your training plan that we set out? What have you done? What have you not done? So that becomes part of your kind of, you can get very operational of kind of digging in. This is all the things I'm doing day to day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But your manager might be looking for a bigger expose of how does it all link together for you, and how is it moving forward. So it's just really good to have your 6 to 12 month plan. If you don't have it, if your manager doesn't have it, you should start to build one yourself, right? Okay, around where you're going to move forward from that perspective. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Gavin. The next point there is, by day 100, achieve at least one significant win. Okay. Yep. And I would say take ownership, as we said, take ownership for this. Your manager, as I said, can be absorbed in whatever work activity is, and they're quite happy for you to be fitting within the remit of the job description. But if you really want to excel, and I think myself and Gavin have made this point more than once, you nearly need to go out. You need to be leaning on your manager and say, is there anything that I can do? Is there some, could I, on the, the VIP visit next month, is there anything that like I could present on? Could I give an update on this? To start dropping ideas. And I know it sounds like you're badgering your manager, but sometimes you nearly need that to take ownership of your own career. The in the mindset of others, your brand has been set, and it's going to be set for a long time, and it's set, as we said, in the first 100 days. So you know now from attending this that you need to find something where you get on the agenda, you get seen, you get to put your name on something. It's very, very important early. If you don't, some other grad will do it. They'll take it if you don't, as we looked in the previous slides, if you don't volunteer. Will that be fair enough, Gavin, or is there anything else to add to
No,
that?
I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Keep looking for feedback from different stakeholders. Be brave and ask them for frank and honest assessment. And I think we've touched on that before. And it does, it's a lot easier to have a nice cordial chat, nice, warm, friendly chat. And it's hard maybe to interrupt that conversation, say, look, I've been in, 2-3 months. I participated in last week's meeting. Any feedback for me, or is there anything from your side of the house? I don't obviously work directly with you, but would you have any feedback for me? Gold mine. I mean, people who are experienced will have no problem giving you some pointers, but may not really offer them unless you ask. And make it something. Now, obviously, you don't want to be tipping the same people week in, week out, going, is there anything else? Is there anything else? What is there about me? I mean, that might look like you might have some sort of a complex as such, but it's even measured. And we're only talking, your first 100 days here. So you'll know, to Gavin's point earlier, who are the important, I suppose, stakeholders, and they're the ones you prioritize as regards feedback, rather than maybe some other grad at the same level looking for feedback from them. Yeah. Is that fair enough to say, Gavin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then coming up.
Can I do this one? Okay. So work-life balance, right? Okay. So this is everything from your vacation to perks of the job, we'll call it, right? Okay. And we covered them off last week when we talked about remuneration packages and stuff like that, right? So I think it's important to, when it comes to work-life balance, right? Okay. Work-life balance is given to you because you've earned it. And this is really important, right? Okay. Is that even when it comes to hybrid working or whatever the case is, that an employer with a new employee might say, I would just like you in the office for the first couple of months because it helps from a teamwork perspective, gets you to know everybody else. But really what they're doing is they're just checking to see around performance, right? Okay, they're just making sure that you're able to do the job. No point having you sitting at home and completely lost. That's of no benefit, right? Okay, but equally they're thinking that they want to see what you look like when it comes to kind of the end of a deadline. Are you willing to do a couple more hours? But really, I think we said this at the start, you need to tell your families and friends you'll have your head down. You're focusing on this, right? Okay, because it does get to a stage where your head comes back up, if you get me. It's not like your head's going to be down the whole time. Your head is down, you're putting the work in, you're putting the time in, right? Okay, because you're trying to make that real significant impression. When you start to get to the stage where you've made the impression, you start to see the rewards. That could be in a monetary perspective, it could be like a bonus, it could be a salary increase,
opportunities.
It could be work-life balance. They're saying, you know what, if you want to work at home on whatever days a week, fine with us, right? Okay, you've earned it or whatever. So it's really important just to be aware of that, right? Okay, you have to put in that hard slog at the start to get to reap the rewards somewhere down the road, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just move on to the next point, which would be to adapt your approach when working virtually. And there's benefits, obviously. Everyone thinks it's all a bed of roses working from home, but I think there's challenges as a new hire, particularly at graduate level, and around the piece that we've talked throughout this talk, the culture piece, the dynamics in the department, the history, the politics, the jargon, etc. It's not as easy when you're not going to bump into people, so you literally have to click a button to engage with them. Now, in your meet and greets, people will normally say, Brendan, any questions, let me know. I mean, what I would say is, it might be helpful to say, well, look, I'm likely to have some questions. What way do you want me to engage with you? Is it all right if I just ring you off the cuff? If you're there, or do you want me to set up a meeting? Just to clear kind of those kind of nuances from the start. So you just know that there is fluidity there, that you can call somebody if you're stuck. The worst thing, I think Gavin will agree this, is being sitting there, someone has asked you to do something and you don't know how to do it, and you're just sitting there in fear. Hours are going by, that person's in meetings thinking this will be ready for me in my inbox for the afternoon when I need to go to my boss, and it's not there. It just balloons up, so just you need to open your mouth. You need to in a virtual sense, put up your hand. You need to reach out to another member of the team perhaps and just ask them to interpret it if the other person isn't available. I don't know, Gavin, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I think you kind of covered that. I think the only other thing I'd say to you is around adapting your approach when working virtually, right? Okay, is turn your camera on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The amount of times where employers are saying to us that I mean, I see it in our own team. Actually, our own team is really good at turning their cameras on. But I've been in meetings within the university, and you're the only one that has a camera on. Everybody else just blank. Now, it's fine on a session like this because this is like a webinar. But I'm saying if you're in a working meeting and all it is just a voice in the dark, you know what I mean? It's I would say to you, so it's the number one thing that employers would say. Turn your camera on so we can see you. And it's not that we're checking up on you. It's just that there's better engagement from that perspective.
Yeah,
so I think,
and just make sure that the position of the webcam, etc., that you're well lit. You don't want to be starting a job and you've stuck, a desk in the corner if you are remote and it's all in shadow and it's embarrassing. Then they have to say, look, Brendan, I can't really see you. Can you refigure your room there, because it's not a great first impression. So we presume that all of those things would be taken care of.
Yeah.
Another point, remember, EQ, emotional intelligence, will be as important as IQ. Do you want to start on that one, Gavin?
Yeah, so this is very much around, I mean, if you haven't ever actually taken an emotional intelligence test, we actually have them available online. You can go onto our website under psychometric testing and you'll find team focus, and there is a tool there that actually talks about emotional intelligence, right? Okay. It's really important just to get a sense of it. It's not all about how kind of your IQ, as Brendan was saying. It sits into these four kind of domains and competencies, right? Around your own self-awareness, i.e., how you actually manage your emotions, right? Okay, in meetings, somebody says something, sometimes it doesn't have to be the verbal reaction. It can be just purely like the look on your face and stuff like that. Being able to manage that. The other stuff is around your self-management, emotional self-control, your adaptability, being very focused on achievement, that orientation towards getting things done and being successful, having a positive outlook. This comes back to, this comes back to what Brendan mentioned earlier on, is that there's some people maybe in a team that have a different agenda, and it may be negative by nature, not purposely, just the way it is, right? Okay, some people have a negative outlook. You don't want to necessarily get dragged into that space from that perspective, right? In the kind of social awareness thing is around the empathy, right? Okay, so it's probably it's probably important to remember, it's very important to have empathy. That doesn't mean that you've lost control, as in you're overly emotional. Having empathy is a very, very strong thing, and it's very important in a work environment when you work with people. As I said earlier on, we talked about this, the organizational awareness that's out there, right? Okay, you need to be aware of what is going on, not just in your unit, the wider units, the whole. I mean, if you're working for a multinational, there's not just your site. There could be multiple sites within Ireland, within Europe, further afield in Asia and America. It's understanding what's going on in the business context. And then that relationship management is all around influence, coaching and mentoring, and being open. So mentoring is sometimes one of those things that you're going to get told you're being mentored. And that's not a bad thing. It's just they're saying to you, I think you need some mentoring, which is very directional in relation to, we need you to do this, this, this by this day and report back. Coaching sits in the other space of, they might say, would you like some coaching from maybe a more experienced team member? And that's a nice offer from that perspective. Conflict management, how do you manage conflict? Is it that you have this massive verbal screaming match and then you don't talk to somebody for 6 months? Doesn't work in an organization, right? Okay, because you have to do, this is a business. So there's a way of actually being able to manage conflict in a very mature, very professional way, and it's been able to understand that, right? Teamwork is a given, and an inspirational leadership. I think that's one of those things. If you're the grad that everybody's trying to emulate, that's inspirational leadership, because everybody's saying that's the person. That's what that looks like. So understanding this is really important. This is a real light touch. We're just kind of talking about what the different domains in relation to emotional intelligence. But I would recommend that you go online and practice one of them and get the results back, and it kind of gives you a sense of you in that space.
I've just put the link in the chat box there, Gavin, for team focus. And I think the best case, just to build on Gavin's point, is, and Gavin will have seen this, and I've seen it myself in industry, that your reputation in one corner is very positive and it nearly precedes you. So people do talk, and they'll say, that guy, Gavin Connell, he's a new hire. Have you met him yet? Excellent, excellent attitude. And they're talking to somebody you have not met. But already your reputation is beginning to spread across the organization to people you've never met. How easy is it to push open that door when people are there to receive you? And they will say to you, I've heard great things about you, Gavin. I've heard great, they will. I mean,
Thanks,
they really, you're welcome, Gavin. They really will want to grow and build a good grad. I think any of the staff members will do that. And the final slide there then is networking. I think we've kind of made that point more than once throughout this talk. Your currency is your relationships with others in the organization. Okay. Your ladder to success will be relationships with your boss, your boss's boss, with your teammates, opportunities to be seen in front of the wider network. So we can't overemphasize, I think, Gavin, the importance of networking.
Yeah, for sure.
As a graduate for your first 100 days.
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier on, right? Okay, people buy from people, right? Okay, it's really important that you don't forget that things are not always transactional through some online system. Make sure you know the people behind it is what I would suggest, right?
Yeah. And we'll finish there. And if there's any questions, and hopefully you found that beneficial, we're happy to answer any questions. If you have any, you can drop them into the chat box there. We have another couple of minutes. Otherwise, as I said, I've put the link in there to Gavin's point in relation to self-awareness and EQ and a lot of personality profiling tools on team focus, and the link is in the chat box. I don't see any other questions coming in at the moment.
I'm just going to stop recording there now, Brandon.
Yeah.